What's up guys, Nemo Propaganda here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're finally going to get to review a PrimaLuna product. I've had my eye on this brand forever. I never really knew how to get a hold of them. Upscale Audio was gracious enough to send me a review sample, so we are going to chat about it. The cool thing is they didn't even send this review sample for me to review it. They originally sent me the Tannoy Autograph Mini bookshelf speakers to review, and they wanted to make sure I had a good amp to pair with them. So they sent me the PrimaLuna, and they're like, you don't have to review it. We're just sending this so you have a good amp to pair with the speakers. I feel like I have other good amps here, but they wanted to make sure I had one that was a good tonal match for those speakers, which I appreciate. 5-star service, very gracious of them. But in my head, I was thinking, listen, if this PrimaLuna is going to come through my home and be here for 60, 70 days, there's no way I'm not going to review it. I have to review it. I owe it to you guys. I owe it to myself, right? I would be a very lazy reviewer to not review an awesome component like this that so many people have asked me about over the years. So here we go. Now, rest assured, I've used this amplifier with a ton of different speakers. Cheap speakers, middle price speakers, expensive speakers. Speakers that are very analytical, speakers that are very warm and tonally rich, speakers that are hard to drive, speakers that are easy to drive, so on and so forth. I've had it here for 70 days. You name it, I've tried it. I've run it with subwoofers, without subwoofers, and so on. I've used all kinds of different music. It's definitely broken in. So this is going to be an easy review. Let's jump into it. I'll throw those main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you about some standout features that I thought were cool. I'll tell you how the amp sounds, of course. I'll tell you how it compares to some other amps, and then we'll wrap up the video. So some cool stuff. There's some custom parts in here. I like to see that. I think that's cool. Some companies use off-the-shelf parts, and there's nothing wrong with that. PrimaLuna has some custom stuff going on in here, which is pretty cool. You can read about a lot of this stuff on their website. I don't want to sound like a sales rep for PrimaLuna and just read straight off the website. So if you want to know more about any of this stuff, look at their website. Point-to-point wiring, pretty cool. It's a lot more labor intensive to do, but it can lead to better sound. So it's pretty cool to see that here. Some cool safety features. You've got a bad tube indicator that'll shut off the amplifier if it detects a tube has gone bad. That's a good thing because if it doesn't shut off the amplifier, you could melt something, and that wouldn't be very fun at all. It also has auto biasing, comes with a remote control that I gotta say is pretty nice. It's very slim, fits in the hand nicely. It's made of metal. The buttons are nice and tactile, and you have no extra buttons. You only have the buttons you need. I love seeing that. There's something that bothers me. It's not a big deal. I understand why they do it, but it bothers me when I get a remote control that has all these extra buttons that you're never going to use. It just tells me like this is just a random like remote that you made work with your product. Whereas with PrimaLuna, it's like this was made specifically for the EVO 100, and I appreciate that. It's even got little bumpers on the bottom, so when you set it down on glass, it doesn't make like a clang or a thud sound. It's damped. It's forward thinking. Look, I appreciate a good remote. You can use all kinds of different tubes with this amplifier if you're into tube rolling. Many options, okay? Did I tube roll? No, I don't do that. When I review a product, I try to keep it in its factory configuration so I can share with you, the viewer, what to expect from this product if you were to buy it. I don't want to modify this thing to high hell, and then how am I going to give you realistic expectations, on what you're going to experience, right? Now, of course, if you can listen to it firsthand, that beats any review you can watch on YouTube, okay? It is what it is. So I think those are the standout features. I think that covers most of them. Let's get into how it sounds. So the top end, I was expecting to be warm and rolled off, being a tube amplifier. It's not. It's not actually. The top end is going to be almost more solid state sounding. It's going to be more open. It's going to be more detailed. It's going to have air. It's going to have sparkle. It's going to have clarity and even good detail retrieval. I very much enjoyed the treble. The treble didn't have a sharp attack. It didn't have a soft and smooth attack. I would call the attack neutral. So with no complaints about the treble, let's move on to the mid-range. This is essentially the star of the show. This is a tube amplifier. Now, again, what I was expecting and what I got were not the same thing. I was expecting tons of warmth, which I don't love, if I'm being completely honest. I like a little bit of warmth, but I don't want to feel like I'm wrapped in a velvet blanket sitting by a fireplace. I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to feel like I'm inside an acoustic guitar. I don't want the amplifier, or speakers for that matter, to be so warm that there is just so much body and bloom to everything that it sounds fake. I don't like that. The EVO 100 is not that warm, thank God. It is, I would say, low to medium in the scale of warmth. I wish there was numbers we could use to quantify this better, but I'll say this. It's plenty warm, but it doesn't overdo it. That's the best way I could say it. And I appreciate that for a lot of reasons, but one main reason is it keeps that mid-range open and expansive. When amps get too warm, the mid-range can get a little closed off unless they're very expensive, but that's another story. PrimaLuna's mid-range is wide, it's deep, it stages tall, good imaging within that soundstage. I had no complaints about the mid-range. Vocalists sounded fantastic. There was a good amount of body and weight to their voices, a lot of realism, good strong center imaging, and good spatial separation between everything. I really like the mid-range. Moving down to the bass, again, what I expected and what I got were totally different. Being a little 40 watts per channel amplifier, I was not expecting it to have a lot of grunt in the bass region. It's got a good amount of grunt in the bass region. Its bass quantity wasn't different from any of the solid state power amplifiers I use, whether they're power amplifiers or integrated amplifiers. Bass quantity was fantastic. Bass quality, control, power, that depended just a little bit more on speaker pairing. This is the smallest integrated amplifier PrimaLuna offers. They do have models with much more power that could drive, speakers to much louder volumes, but this is what I found. And this may come as no surprise to most of you. Speakers that were a little bit easier to drive, well, the PrimaLuna was able to control the bass a little bit better on those. Speakers that were real hard to drive, think anything by ELAC, CSS. It still controlled the bass, don't get me wrong, but when you dug into that volume a little more, it did start to lose control just a little bit when compared to solid state counterparts in and around the same price. Now, that's not a knock against the amplifier. 40 watts a channel is a good amount of power. And no matter what speaker I used, it was loud enough in my room and always kept its composure. I generally like to listen around 80 dB, 75 sometimes on the low side. I might push it to 85 on the high side, but average is going to be about 80 dB. So as far as the speakers I used, I'll give you some examples. On the affordable side, Hecko Aurora 300. Middle price, we got the Hecko Salon Revolution 3. A little bit higher in the middle price category, Buchart S400 Mark II, KEF R3 Meta, Dynaudio Evoke 20. Real expensive stuff. We got the Monacoustics Platamon, $6,500 a pair. The EVO 100 paired fairly well with everything. I didn't really have any complaints. The only thing I'll say is this. If you've already got a speaker that's plenty warm and you do not want more warmth, at that point I would say get maybe a more analytical solid state amplifier then, right? So that's what it sounds like. Do I have any complaints? Yes, I have two complaints. One, no subwoofer output. You guys know I love subwoofers. I review more subwoofers than anyone on YouTube, especially for 2-channel music. Now, it's not the biggest deal breaker because you can use high level and use many of REL's subwoofer options that are absolutely fantastic. For a lot of my listening, I was either using the REL Classic 98 or the REL T9X Red. When I wasn't using a REL subwoofer, I was using no subwoofer because I want to hear what the amp can do on its own without a subwoofer also, of course. But yeah, I do wish it had a subwoofer output. I do at $2,800. I'd like to see that. Not a deal breaker though. Second complaint, also not a big deal, but perhaps worth mentioning. Now, just to give you a little bit of context, I am spoiled when it comes to granularity with my volume control. My preamp that I use as my daily driver adjusts in quarter dB increments. I understand that's not normal, and I am very spoiled with granularity. But I did wish the volume steps when you press that remote control volume up and down were just a little bit smaller. They're not massive jumps by any means. It doesn't sound like just big steps happening, but I wish the changes were just a little bit smaller. The volume knob itself, let me tell you, listen, you can get very granular with the manual knob if you decide to just turn that. And if you do, what a treat. Listen. You turn this volume knob and you just feel like a big rich guy. This volume knob screams wealth. It screams build quality. It screams class. It is one of the most beautiful physical experiences. It's got the perfect amount of resistance, and it feels so buttery smooth. I don't know what they put in there. I know they put a fancy one in there. I'm not a potentiometer guy. I don't know about potentiometers, honestly. I know it's got a good one though, and you can feel it when you touch that thing. Wow. So, how does it compare to other amplifiers in and around this price? Let's talk about a tube amplifier comparison first. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. The Galion TS120 Special Edition. Now, that amp is twice as large, substantially heavier, and $1,700 more money. So we do have to keep that in mind. Let's talk about the tonal differences first. In the treble region, the Galion is going to have a sharp attack to its treble. The EVO 100 is going to have a neutral attack. It's not going to be sharp or soft and smooth, neutral with its attack. Both amplifiers are going to have a good amount of detail and a good amount of detail retrieval. The $1,700 more expensive Galion is going to have just a little bit more detail retrieval overall, and is going to be a little bit more on the forward side of neutral compared to the EVO 100. Moving down in the mid-range, they're both tube integrated amplifiers. Both amplifiers have a good, warm, tonally rich mid-range. The biggest difference I found was the Galion was just a little bit warmer sounding. So as far as being accurate, I guess you would say, the PrimaLuna EVO 100 is the more accurate, and the Galion TS120 Special Edition has a little bit more flavor to it. Moving down to the bass, both amplifiers had good, strong, confident bass. The biggest difference here is going to come down to the physical size and heft of the Galion. Being $1,700 more money, having quite a bit more power, having much larger transformers inside. When pushed to the limit, the Galion could, of course, drive speakers to louder volumes and control their woofers just a little bit more. And I believe you would expect that same experience when going up PrimaLuna's own chain, because they've got 3 other integrated amplifiers that are larger. And generally speaking, larger amplifiers, more power, you're going to get more confident bass. That's kind of how that works. But listen, none of this is a knock against the PrimaLuna EVO 100. We got to remember, it is $1,700 cheaper. That's a substantial difference when the total cost is $2,800. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but that's something like a 45% increase the Galion has in price over the EVO 100. So no surprises there. Tonally, both fantastic, and I think most people would be happy with either one, quite honestly. So if you saw that Galion amp and you're like, dude, I can't afford it, it costs a little bit too much, PrimaLuna is a fantastic alternative, I'd say. Let's see if there's any solid state amps we can compare it to, just to give you guys an idea of some stuff. Let's do the Hagel H190. That's a real good, well-known solid state integrated amp. I think a lot of people know about that one. It's on sale right now. It's normally $3,800. I don't know if the sale is still happening. If it is, it was on sale for a while for $2,800. So on sale, same price. Not on sale, the Hagel's $1,000 more. Let's start with the top end. The Hagel is actually going to be a little bit smoother and a little bit more pulled back in the top end compared to the PrimaLuna EVO 100. The PrimaLuna EVO 100 is going to be a little bit more forward, a little bit more air, a little bit more treble energy. Neither amplifier is, going to be aggressive or overly bright in any way, just by direct comparison here, right? Moving down in the mid-range, both amps are warm in the mid-range, but the PrimaLuna EVO 100 being a tube amplifier is going to be just a much more organic sound stage, much more holographic, much more three-dimensional, all those things we would expect of it being a tube amplifier. It absolutely delivers. The Hagel H190 still has a fantastic mid-range, but it is solid state by direct comparison. It is not going to be as holographic, as three-dimensional, and staged the same way that the PrimaLuna EVO 100 can. Moving down to the bass, again, the difference is going to be, as you would expect, between solid state and tube. Both amplifiers do a great job in their bass region. Obviously, the much larger and, when not on sale, much more expensive Hagel H190 will control the woofers just a little bit better in the bass region when pushed to the absolute limit. So, I'll be honest, I don't really feel like doing any more comparisons. It's kind of complicated and tough comparing tube amps to non-tube amps because it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't think most people would cross-shop that kind of stuff anyways. Look, I'll leave you with this. Is it a good amp? I think so. Is it worth its price? Yeah, I think so. Is it built well? Yeah, it's built well. And one of the things I like the most is whether you're just getting into the hobby or, you've had 10 tube amplifiers already. The PrimaLuna has a feature set and sound I think most people will be able to get behind. So if you got any questions, this YouTube channel does have a free Discord server. You can also ask your questions in the YouTube comments below, but if it's a complicated question that requires some back and forth, I will prefer the Discord server. What else? Yeah, listen, that's it. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Until next time.